And I'm Jess Delos Santos. It's the start of a new trading day, but first, let's go straight to our top story. This just in, the country's exports rose 2.2% in September, while imports contracted 16.5%. Meanwhile, the country's Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI, dropped to 48.5 in October from 50.1 in September. A number below 50 signals contraction. IHS Markit says the latest data indicated that operating conditions across the factory sector worsened in October as the pandemic persisted. Companies experienced a new fall in orders amid continuous closures of businesses and weakening demand. That's according to IHS Markit. It also said job losses extended into the fourth quarter. Union Bank Chief Economist Carlos Asuncion said the latest PMI figure is an indication that demand has yet to resurrect from the deep decline amid momentary upticks brought by the reopening of the economy. Asuncion also noted that this could signal a, quote, long and challenging road to recovery to pre-pandemic levels. All right, Dan, we have those trade figures, but really the big story for today would have to be the U.S. elections. And today we are expecting a chock full of electoral results over in the U.S. What's the tally and what are investors betting on?
Okay, you're gonna have to bear with me here because, as you know, the tally is changing every minute, and it's a very close race here. But as of right now, you're gonna be seeing Joe Biden pulling an early lead over President Donald Trump. That's after he actually won a slew of traditionally Democratic states over in Eastern United States. President Donald Trump, meanwhile, easily won several Republican strongholds. So these were actually very expected. So you've got Biden winning over Virginia, Illinois. You can see the map there on our screens. Maryland, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, Rhode Island, Delaware, and Washington. This is according to the Associated Press. Meanwhile, you've got Trump getting the red states. You've got Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, West Virginia, and Oklahoma. So this just now gives Biden an 88 to 66 lead in the Electoral College. Now note that in the U.S. presidency, the first candidate to reach 270 will be the one to claim the presidency. Now, what are investors really looking out for here? Those are the swing states, one of which, and the most important being highlighted here, is Florida. This is what President Donald Trump is claiming to be crucial to his re-election hope. So that is actually right now being counted here. Now, nevertheless, when you look at how equities are being positioned, a lot of investors have been positioning for a Biden win. And that's basically because of speculation mounting that this decision will be coming, and that because of this decision, Congress will be delivering a $2 trillion stimulus bill. And that has been what has been leading the polls. Now, what is actually the worry of a lot of investors here, and why there's going to be a lot of uncertainty, is not so much who is going to be winning the presidency, but when this will be announced. You've actually gotten this number might actually be different here. It was 51% of the votes in as of 8:30 in the morning, and of course that has been changing already. You've got still several polling stations still open right now, but right now the lead in Florida seems to be on Donald Trump. You've even got the New York Times predicting he has a 91% chance of winning that key battleground state. So this was actually vital to Trump's win during 2016. It came as a very big surprise. So a lot of eyes on that. You've got the head of hedge fund firm Light Sky Macro, that's Ben Meckelman. He said that that's the absolute most important thing to watch on election night for the traders. Apart from Florida, you've also got North Carolina, Ohio, and Texas. Those are the states that investors are mostly monitoring. And the problem is that a lot of the voting has, of course, been mailed in. And election experts are saying that these will be able to be counted by the end of the night. So some might take weeks, some might take the end of the night. So again, why is this so exciting? Investors are bracing for not just a divisive election, but for the fact that what's happened, Jess, is that the Democrats tend to vote quite early. They've mailed in a lot of the votes already but the Republicans, or the what President Donald Trump has called a red wave, seem to be going physically to the polling station. So it's actually quite, exciting here. You'd never know, because most of these people are actually willing to go out and vote. And a major important part, of course, that we need to be watching out for is the COVID cases in these swing states, and how that's going to be changing the results or the course of the election. So a lot of these swing states and their COVID numbers, and the red wave of Republicans actually going out to vote, is something that a lot are really watching out for, and nobody can really predict the outcome. A lot of analysts are saying that the worst outcome, however, Jess, is really an uncertain winner scenario, where it's, it might not actually be known tonight, and there might not be a very clear margin. So a lot of uncertainty here, and that's going to be roiling the markets moving forward.
All right, and shifting gears for over here at the home front here, a bit of optimism amid a Typhoon Raleigh damage assessment. Some say it wasn't as bad as fear. We have more details on that later, but is that optimism spilling over into today?
Okay, let me shift gears over to the local bourse and try and open. First of all, let's take a step back just and just see how Wall Street performed, so we understand how the elections are coloring the rest of Asia. You've actually got quite optimistic movement over in Wall Street overnight. You can see the Dow Jones up by more than 2%, the S&P 500 up by 1.8%, the Nasdaq as well up by close to 1.9%. Now, if you move over to the Asia Pacific region, it is rather green. So opening on the front foot here with Japan, which was on a holiday yesterday, that's up by 1.4% as of 9:20 this morning. The rest of Asia seems to also be sharing in this optimistic spillover here. Let's take a quick peek at our own local bourse and how we are opening. Recall that yesterday we were up a touch. That's up by 0.2%. And this, according to Chris Mangan yesterday, he's of AAA Equities, the optimism was really caused by the fact that the damages that were assessed because of Typhoon Raleigh there's still, of course, damages, but less than what was feared. And he said that caused some optimism in the markets. Value turnover as well, pretty strong. That was at 6.6 billion pesos yesterday. Nevertheless, another thing that's still quite worrying, net foreign selling, that was at 1.14 billion pesos yesterday. You can see our bourse also opening with that same optimism as Wall Street. That's up by 0.5% to just a little over 63.60 this morning. Now, Jess, I'm sorry, but I still have to break some earnings for you. We're not done with earnings season, so to speak. And we've got Petron here reporting their third quarter profit. That's at 1.63 billion pesos, and that brings their 9-month figures to a net loss of 12.6 billion pesos. That's versus a profit of 3.6 billion pesos. This is, of course, on the back of the revenues for the 9 months down by 43%. The bright spot here, however, is that the retail volume was actually up 49% quarter on quarter. So they did mention that, it's a good thing to actually have this third quarter net income versus just having a loss during this period. Now, another big issue here is that they have actually resumed normal operations in October for their refinery. Recall that President Ramon Ang, of course, of San Miguel, who does own Petron, was saying that they are interested in a Petron refinery sale in Bataan after Shell had also exited and turned that into an import terminal. But he says they have raised tax-related concerns with the government, and he is actually hopeful still that might actually result into them still continuing their operations. Ramon Ang saying the company wants to keep the refinery running, hopeful of the government support. You can see Petron here up by close to 1% this morning, trading at 3 pesos and 70 centavos. Now, moving over to Globe, another star player during the pandemic. Even as they had reported that their third quarter profit fell, that's down by 22% to 4.39 billion pesos, and that brings their net income down 10% to 15.9 billion pesos. So again, they mentioned that this was because of the fact that the lockdown actually weighed on their earnings. Their service revenue was down in the 9 months by 1%, even as the third quarter posts an improvement from the second quarter. A bright spot here for Globe is that GCash digital payment platform, that's now 26 million users of GCash. Registrations were more than 3.5 times compared to the lockdown level. So very exciting times here. Globe trading up by 0.5% to 2,030 pesos. Just meanwhile, you've also got more data on how much Rolly has wreaked havoc on agriculture. That has been a topic of concern, even as investors are saying it was less than expected. How massive was it for that sector?
Well, if you're going to believe what the DA is saying, they're saying, in fact, it is quite minimal compared to really how big of an output we have on a yearly basis. But you see, that has already increased to 2 billion pesos, previously pegged at 1.75 billion pesos by the Agriculture Department. In terms of produce, we're talking about 117,000 metric tons of agricultural produce here. You have around 30,000 farmers and fisher folk that were affected by Typhoon Rolly. At the same time, in terms of area, we're talking 26,900 hectares of farm land. Now, from there, if we try to segmentize it and try to focus on particular products here, rice would have to be the biggest damaged here. You have 1.1 billion pesos in losses, around 62,000 in metric tons of rice produced. At the same time, around 20,000 hectares affected and 19,000 farmers also, crippled by Typhoon Rolly here. High value crops as well at 791 million pesos in losses. Corn likewise also posting 68.9 million pesos in losses. And I'm going to make this quick here since we still have two guests here on the show. But you see, from Quintar, you already have 2.56 billion pesos worth of agricultural damages. Combined with Rolly, that equals to 4.56 billion pesos worth of damages from the two typhoons alone, and that's expected to climb some more as you have more reports coming in about the possible damages here inflicted by the two typhoons. However, according to the DA, assistance is available. We're talking about 400 million pesos in quick response fund. At the same time, you have 300 million pesos of loan fund coming from the Survival and Recovery Program of the Agricultural Credit Policy Council. So far, according to the DA, the damage is less than 1% of the annual target rice output of around 20 million metric tons, according to Director Roy Abay of the DA. This is really small, and the impact is minimal, and ending stocks at the end of the year still ranging from around 102 to 110 days worth of consumption. Dan.
But Jess, it's a different story when it comes to infrastructure and power. How much damage there?
Public infrastructure damage is now, according to the Department of Public Works and Highways, pegged at 5.76 billion pesos, and they are expecting that to go up as they continue their assessment this week. In fact, you have flood control structures. Ironically, they're the most damaged here at 2 billion pesos. National roads at the same time incurred as much as 1.5 billion pesos worth of damages, and there are 1.38 billion pesos worth of damages as well in other structures here. According to DPWH Secretary Mark Villar, majority of the damages were reported in Bicol. In fact, that accounts for 4.62 billion pesos worth of infrastructure damages in Region 5 alone. There were 5 avenues which were somehow impassable, as well as one, particularly in Catanduanes, the area being badly hit by Typhoon Rolly. There are also avenues closed in Cordillera as well as in Central Luzon. Overall, you have 19 road sections already cleared by the DPWH. Now, when it comes to power, you have 30.5 million pesos worth of damages among electric cooperatives. That's from the National Electrification Administration. Highest levels of damage, in fact, are reported in 3 cooperatives in Camarines Sur. That ranges from 3 million to 17 million pesos worth of damages. And according to the NGCP, you have 8 230 kilovolt transmission lines that were affected, and 5 6 to 9 kilovolt transmission lines in South Luzon still currently down. So a lot of things still being assessed here over the week. We are expecting those figures to come out as the days as more of the reports come in. That.
Okay, so hoping for a quick recovery there, especially in the Bicol region. Thanks, Jess. Okay, guys, we're still in the thick of monitoring U.S. presidential elections. We have with us Chief Economist of RCBC, Mike Ricafort, to give us a lowdown on what outcome he would prefer. Good morning, sir. Tell us, what are you hoping for?
Happy birthday and good morning, Danie. So for
Thank you,
the
sir.
US elections, well, a Democrat win, even a possible blue wave, that would lead to a greater multilateral arrangements. That would mean there would be less U.S.-China trade war. We have seen it for the past 1 to 2 years. We have seen some slowdown in Asian economies because of the trade war. Uh, Also, it would also lead to better policies on immigration, and that would positively affect a lot of Filipinos, especially those in the U.S., as well as on tax policy. Of course, it would be higher taxes for the wealthiest, and that could and also the possibility of also a lockdown in the U.S. In view of the record high COVID-19 cases there, as Joe Biden already signaled during the campaign. And at the same time, and more importantly, on the industries, it would be a boom for the renewables. There would be the discouragement of fracking or the shale oil, less use of natural gas, and more of renewables like solar, wind, geothermal, hydro. So those would be so that would mean better economic growth for Asia, and at the same time, Democrats are known to be they would like to spend more. They're even pushing for a higher that would lead to higher government spending and stimulus, wider budget deficits, more U.S. government borrowings, higher supply of bonds to finance those stimulus measures, and that would lead to increased supply would lead to lower prices of bonds and higher yields, as we have seen lately.
Sir, can we look at the domestic front, particularly since trade figures have just come out and they seem to be surprising on the upside? Exports actually growing by 2.2% compared to what analysts were expecting was supposed to be a contraction here. Tell us, how does this election result impact our own trade relations with the United States, especially as, of course, we're seeing our manufacturing exports starting to finally pick up?
That's right, Danny. We have seen a faster recovery in exports. Surprisingly, it's a year and year. It's even better prior to pre-COVID
Oh, wow.
19 levels a year ago. So that's a surprise. And in recent months, we have seen a faster recovery in exports relative to imports. Imports have been kind of slow, meaning on a monthly basis, the volumes have been among the lowest in 3 years. Because that reflects the slowdown in the economy. So that resulted to a stronger peso as a result. We're seeing savings on the we've seen savings in the net imports, meaning a narrower trade deficit, less importation of roughly between $1 to $2 billion per month. So that resulted to a stronger peso exchange rate. And now, hopefully, things have changed for the past 3 to 4 years in terms of U.S.-Philippine relations in view of the election. So hopefully, that would the improved relations would continue to be sustained, especially now that cooperation is key in terms of addressing COVID-19, especially for getting supplies for vaccines more than anything else, as well as for security and defense as well.
Sir, can you comment, why is it that our PMI in October dropped to 48.5 and we're seeing, the exports actually picking up? And this comes after September finally saw us above the 50 mark, albeit, basically in the 50 mark. And we're also not recovering in terms of manufacturing along with the rest of the ASEAN region. What is going on here? Is this a matter of the lockdowns? Is this, something that's more chronic or long-term pain to be seen in the sector?
Well, hopefully, the further easing of the lockdowns would continue as we see further reopening of the economy. Because now we have yet, relative to our neighbors, actually the lockdowns here in the Philippines is among the longest, whereas in many other Asian countries and other ASEAN countries, they're almost business as usual. They have the stringent health measures. But that's one of the reasons why the recovery has been relatively slow in view of the social distancing, other stringent measures, and other health protocols that led to, for many businesses and industries to operate at partial capacity, meaning that's also clearly seen. If you look at the data for average capacity utilization, it even reached recently on the record lows, meaning that's somewhat reflective also of the relatively slower pace of recovery. And also, we came from there's a brief intermission, a 2-week MECQ on Metro Manila and nearby areas from August 4 to 18. So, no, so that would be key going forward, especially in the coming months. If we see, if we see, say, the Metro Manila, the GCQ is relaxed further to MGCQ, that would allow more businesses and industries to operate at much higher capacity, say towards 75% and 100%, and allowing more service industry, especially those involving person-to-person transaction and so involving some crowd. So that would allow eventually some pick up in manufacturing as well as definitely in imports. But of course, exports has always been a priority sector, even during the lockdown. So they continue to operate, and with the easing of the constraints on logistics and on supply chains now, with the world opening further from the lockdown, so that has clearly shown the resilience of exports. We have seen also a lot of improved indicators. The manufacturing worldwide has been very much resilient after COVID-19.
Thank you so much. That was, of course, Sir Mike Ricafort telling us that there are a lot of bright spots, and hopefully this contraction is just a temporary figure during this difficult times. Thank you so much, Mike Ricafort, Chief Economist of RCBC. Guys, we'll have more of the corporate and economic news when Business World Live returns. Stay with us.
It is on the show. Again, let me just repeat that. While the votes are streaming in over in the US, let's talk about the prospects of one of the world's biggest tech firms here in the Philippines. We have head of Microsoft Philippines, Andres Ortola. Good morning, Andres. Great to have you here with us on the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
All right. So apart from the elections, Andres, the year's biggest issue still, of course, being the pandemic. How has that impacted your performance over here in the Philippines? Or, I mean, I wouldn't like to put it this way, but was it a boon for Microsoft?
Well, we have seen definitely an increase in demand for digital solutions and technologies. In fact, we recently announced results. Our revenue has grown 12% worldwide, and our Azure business is growing at 48%. And our Office 365 Suite Productivity Suite is growing at 21%. Interesting also is that before the pandemic, our Microsoft Teams platform had about 44 million daily users. That number today is around 115 million. Now, that doesn't come easily, as you can imagine. That put a lot of stress in our company on how to react and how to make sure customers continue to be served with the quality we'd like them to have. But I would say overall in the Philippines as well, we've seen, like our CEO said, 2 years of transformation happening in a couple of months. And that's been reality.
And that acceleration, is that something that's also translated in terms of government adoption when it comes to digital solutions?
Absolutely. When we look at how we've been operating in these months, we look at, building resiliency and what we call respond, recover, reimagine phases. Initially, we engaged with many organizations of the government and private sectors. We wanted to set ourselves as the digital first responders. And we've been working with government and, for example, responding to the situation through applications like Rapid Pass and Trace COVID and things like that. Overseas Filipino workers were also helped with the help of our partner NTT Data. to really come faster with those solutions. At the same time, when you look at the recovery phase, we have seen cases where the government has actually changed the way they did things to adapt quickly to this new situation. Case important in this months has been our work with Supreme Court. We have worked with them enabling virtual hearings. Virtual hearings allowed Supreme Court to, as of today, to release more than 60,000 PDLs, people that should be in still prison, that their hearings have been had and they are back home. And then, and last but not least, when I think of rethink and the next phase, the work we've done with education and getting children ready for the next cycle. We have right now more than 18 million children on our Office 365 platform, and our learning management systems is up and running. So I think the government has been super active in many fronts right now.
All right, Andres, we don't have much time left, but what do you think are the tech and programs that is going to help at least push the recovery here in the Philippines, and how is that going to feed into your future projects for the country?
Well, we think that definitely the defining technology of these times will be artificial intelligence. In fact, last week we announced with the sponsorship of DTI, the AI Filipinas Coalition, which seeks to build a framework for companies and government to accelerate AI adoption. We also believe it needs to be inclusive. We launched a Microsoft Enabled program, where we are going to be working on increasing people with disabilities employability all across. And then last but not least, we've been very active on reskilling the workforce that has been now affected by the pandemic, reskilling them in new technologies, whether it's artificial intelligence, cloud technologies, and model productivity.
All right, definitely more technologies in the pipeline here, at least coming from Microsoft Philippines. Thank you very much, Andres Ortola, head of Microsoft Philippines. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And that's a first look into the business day this Thursday, November 4, 2020. I'm Jess Delos Santos.
Catch us again tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m. I'm Danie Laurel. We are One News.